Hey everyone, hopefully you're having a good day. My name's Andy. My channel's Finding Value. Today we're going to do our daily technical analysis updated commodities, work our way through the dollar, yields, precious metals, and commodities ETFs that I follow. If you need help with anything, check out finding-value.com. That is where I talk about individual companies, individual stocks, and what I'm doing. So let's dive in here. Let's see what's going on today, and I can give you my financial opinion. Starting with the dollar is still continuing to move sideways in this channel. We had a little bit of a dip, which came and was then bought back up throughout the day. So we've got lots of volatility swinging back and forth in the price of the dollar in the short term. And we've been holding steady. Looking over at yields are looking a little bit softer. We are still in this kind of box going sideways, but we are mounting some pretty large selling pressure candlesticks. There's some here. We have another one here and another one that showed up today. Generally, when you get these impulse moves to the downside, uh, sometimes they like to break to the downside and start or continue. This would be a continuation of the previous trend. Here's the previous trend, a little consolidation. And are we going to break or are we going to head higher? It's important to know where yields are going to go because that does price assets in the market. And are we going to come back to this level in here? It's a very good possibility that we could sell back off and we could get a slowdown in the market. Generally, yields go down when there's a slowdown in the market. So right now, I'm going to say that I'm in favor. This is a tough one because we're literally going back and forth. This could be an inverted shoulder, head, shoulder. We could be selling off here, ready for a move to head lower. In the short term, this is a really difficult read. We also have the 10-year that's been falling back. I would have said this is bullish here with these two bullish candlesticks, but we've pulled on back three candlesticks after it with some pretty good selling pressure today, down 2.3%. And then we've got longer term support down here. And one could say that this is a continuation pattern and that we've broken to the downside here just today and that we could see yields fall further. And I would be saying, yeah, that's definitely a possibility here. So weaker yields, and we could see even further weaker yields if this is a continuation pattern to the downside. The 30-year yield also looking kind of weak as well. If this is a continuation pattern, we could see further downside in yields on the 10 and 30, and maybe even the 2-year yield too. We did have a little bit of a bounce off the back end here towards the end of the day, but that's what the little wick is at the bottom. But again, it's pretty big down pressure day today. TYX TNX ratio, it's coming on up. This is generally good for gold. I'm surprised gold's flat today, but it's generally good for gold when this goes up. Bond prices moving on up some degree today. And then we've got the US 10-year, which, I mean, it's basically sideways for the 2 and 10, which means the 2 and 10 fell together quite similarly today. So kind of a funky looking trading going on in yields. We've got, good signals that came, but then something went in the opposite direction. Makes me think that they're probably in there buying bonds. That would be my guess to bring down these yields. Someone is. Gold, surprisingly, this isn't following through with weak. The dollar was flat. We had weaker yields, and the yield curve on the 30 and 10 year came. It did invert or uninvert, I should say. Again, this isn't like a strong move to the upside. This easily could go lower, which has me a little bit confused because yields look like they want to go lower. So trying to gain my bearings here of what exactly is going on. We do have kind of a squeeze up here broken to the downside, which generally yields want to go higher when gold goes lower, but it's not what we're seeing. Not what we're seeing. Silver down 1.25. That's still squeezing up. Platinum down a little bit today. Still looks good. And then palladium up a little bit, and it still looks like it's trying to bottom. We've got XAU to gold. So this is the gold silver mining companies to gold. It's down a little bit today. And we still haven't broken that big long-term downtrend line. CRB index, oil was down. So we're down a little bit in the CRB index, but this still looks good to go higher. Are they trying to do something to hold the CRB index down? I don't know. Don't know there. But generally, yields go up, CRB index goes up. They kind of go up together. We didn't see that today. CRB to S&P 500. The CRB is outperforming the S&P 500 today, moving on up. It looks good to try to move on up here if it wants to. GDX down 0.7%. We've got large selling pressure candlestick here. We've got good conditions. The interest rates sold off. We got a move higher in the TYX-TNX ratio, which is generally good for gold to go up, but it didn't go up. And this still looks like we could go lower, as weird as it sounds. GDXJ also looks that, and I'm looking at this bearish engulfing here, the lead in here, and basically like a flag pattern. That's what I'm using for a potential move lower. But generally, when you move lower, it's usually with a rising interest rate environment. But, maybe we've got a slowdown in the market coming. People are kind of just dumping everything. SILJ also selling off today. Looks like we could potentially go lower. Crude oil selling off. Looks like we could be coming back here, perhaps. We've got a breakout, and then sometimes we do a retest. And that's probably likely of what's going to go on is a retest. TTF net gas looks good to go higher. We've broken out of that downtrend line, and we are above support. Nat gas in America up a little bit, 2.2%, which is a little bit for natural gas. And I think we're going to try to bottom here at some point because this is just too cheap for sustaining production in natural gas. XOP, yeah, you know me, down 2.65%. Pretty strong selling pressure day after a very nice move yesterday of a gigantic bullish engulfing. What the heck's going on here? Generally don't see this type of maneuver, but it does happen in the markets. So I'm kind of holding steady. OIH getting a pretty big selling pressure day. It's a bearish engulfing. Could we see lower down, a little bit more downside left? I know oil may pull back a little bit. Maybe we got a little bit of sideways to slightly lower action in the equities as well still. Sprott Uranium Trust, a little bit of a selling pressure candlestick today. Maybe we're going to bounce around here, pull on back, or go sideways for a little bit. But again, the uranium sector is so volatile, that could change in a heartbeat. We've got URA down 0.7%. Some of these candlesticks are kind of tough, but it makes me think that we want to pull sideways to slightly lower. We gapped up in the morning and then sold off throughout the day, which means the momentum's to the downside. So we basically came up and then sold off throughout the day. So we might have a little bit of downside pressure left in this, and we'll see if there's what the follow through looks like if there is selling pressure. And again, this could be a retest here too. So we'll see it. URNM doing the same thing. A little bit of selling pressure. URNJ doing the same thing. This could very well easily move higher. The short term here, guys, it's a really interesting setup, and I don't have a good read on it right now because of the yields. Yields have been flip-flopping back and forth, moving lower here, surprisingly, and moving at a pretty good pace. Surprised that gold's not following it. So it's like a muddy indicator where someone's like in there messing with things. TAN down a little bit, which is also weird because usually this does pretty well with yields going back down. We had yields go down today and it's down. So it's kind of across the board selling. COPX down a little bit, down 1.55%. We've got lithium down 2%. Momentum's definitely to the downside there. We've got REMX down. I mean, momentum's downside here, guys. We've got S&P selling off quite hard, down 1.6%. We've got NASDAQ down 2.23%. Lots of selling pressure across the board here. KRE down 5.8%. Do we have a problem in the banking system? Perhaps. Maybe that's where the kind of the epicenter of the crisis could be. I mean, that's a pretty big selling pressure day. Emerging markets down a little bit, but holding steady. Home builders down. Looks like we could pull back a little bit here. Moo down 1.5. That's going to that $69 level that we were saying of support. Copper down a little bit, but right on support resistance for a potential breakout. We've got iron ore up 0.6%, but the momentum still to the downside. We've got aluminum up 0.6 right at the top of the resistance line level. Baltic Dry Index selling off a little bit, down 4.3 right on support. We've got Newcastle Coal down 2%. That's what we're seeing. Bitcoin down 2% today, which is a bearish engulfing, which means we could go a little bit lower. And then we've got Ethereum also down, bearish engulfing. Looks like we could potentially head lower, where this is kind of a flag pattern. We could head lower. So that's what I'm seeing today. Lots of weakness in the market, guys, across the board. We saw yields drop, and we saw a sell-off across the board. Generally, this occurs when people start to panic. You see yields drop, like we're seeing, and we're seeing kind of a sell-off across the board, pretty decent in size. But again, we're real early. Let's see if there's any follow-through with it. If there's follow-through with it, which looking at the charts, I would expect that to continue, some selling pressure. So we'll see how big it is, and we'll see what it looks like. But that's what I've got for today. Thumb up for the content, subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you guys later. This is Finding Value.